Like to call to order the June 18th, 2024 meeting of the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission. Director McCloy, would you please take the roll call?
Absolutely. Commissioner Alexander,
Here.
Vice Chair Barrett,
Present.
Chair Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn. Here. Amazing timing. Commissioner Duda,
Here.
Commissioner Forster. Is not currently present. Commissioner Frick
Here.
and Commissioner Graham.
Here.
Commissioner Rotner
Present.
and Commissioner Walker. Present. So Chair, we just have an absence from Commissioner Forster.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome you all. I'd like to welcome you all this evening. Welcome to our visitors, our speaker, Tom Dole, whom we'll be hearing from shortly, and any visitors that are present on Zoom. The first item on the agenda is the acceptance of the agenda. It was posted on the city website last Thursday, June 13th. Is there any discussion about the items in the agenda or the order of the items?
No.
If not, then we'll consider the agenda accepted. And the next item on the agenda then is our presentation, which is going to be about sustainability in Palm Springs parks. And Tom Dole is going to be our presenter. He's owner of a design firm, Tom Dole Design in Palm Springs. He's also a member of the Parks and Recreation Task Force that Director McCloy and I are members of. And that's where I first heard his presentation, and I thought it would be appropriate to have him give it to the commission. So here he is this evening. Tom?
Great, thank you. Can you get a full screen? Yes. There we go. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me to give this presentation. I came up with this project, sort of a vision for Sunrise Park primarily back in last summer, and presented this to City Council in October, and it's since made the rounds and gone through a number of revisions as new information comes forward. So I hope that it's of interest to you tonight. Strategically located yet hiding in plain sight in the center of Palm Springs, Sunrise Park comprises 38 acres next to the high school and 1 block from the new COD campus. It has the largest concentration of public recreational facilities in the city. Surprisingly, it is also the largest historic campus of public buildings by prominent Palm Springs architects. Who knew? Sunrise Park started out as the Polo Grounds, a public recreation project built in 1950. With a horse track, grandstands, and paddocks, the Polo Grounds was the center of Palm Springs Western cowboy culture and the site of the Desert Circus and Rodeo. It also included the Palm Springs Baseball Stadium and the Pavilion Community Center in a former 1941 roller rink designed by architect John Porter Clark. On the same block at the corner of Sunrise and Ramon is the former Fire Station No. 2 by Clark and Frey from 1951. This became the Mizell Center by architect Chris Mills in 1990. Although heavily restyled, the original forms can clearly be seen. 2 other buildings were added to Sunrise Park: the Boys Club, later the Boys and Girls Club, in 1958, and the Dr. Fry J.C. Building in 1966 by W.C. Doty, which is used by the library and will soon be renovated. Due to the increasing recreational needs of a growing community, a 1972 park study recommended that the Polo Grounds be redeveloped with significant new facilities and additional recreational facilities be created throughout the city. A $5 million bond act was put to the voters for an ambitious plan: reconstruct the Polo Grounds and include 4 new buildings. Purchase Francis Stevens School to create a senior center and park, expand Demuth Park, build a new community center and expansion of Desert Highland Park, and add bicycle trails throughout the city. The Bond Act passed overwhelmingly. With bond approval secured in late 1972, high-profile local architects were enlisted to design the facilities and create a master plan for the new Sunrise Park. Prominent architect William Cody, as city architect, headed the Palm Springs collaborative team with a who's who of 9 local architects, including Donald Wexler, Richard Harrison, Hugh Capter, and Michael Black. Added to the team were landscape architects David Hamilton and Michael Buccino. But the timing of this large series of projects was terrible. By the start of construction bidding in the fall of 1973, the oil crisis hit, with strikes, fuel and materials shortages, and inflation that made costs soar by 25%. Value engineering and design changes were quickly made to all the projects, and redesigns and rebidding led to delays. At the top here is an early rendering of the Pavilion and Leisure Center north facade, and the rendering below is the south facade as seen from the pool. These initial designs for the campus included a consistent design motif of angled walls and buttresses on all the buildings, reflecting a brutalist style that was also used extensively in bermed buildings with partially earth-covered exterior walls, an energy-saving design in response to the environmental movement and the gas crisis of the 1970s. Many of these design flourishes were eliminated to save money. Cost cutting hit the swim center hardest. Here is the original plan with Hughes Capter's large, stylish bathhouse, a snack bar, seating, and bleachers. After cost cutting, the bathhouse was reduced from 5,200 square feet to a rudimentary 1,500 square feet, about the size of a small condominium. And the other amenities were eliminated along with the buttresses and other distinctive architectural features. Fortunately, the large pool itself was unchanged. The library was the only building that was largely spared the knife, with the distinctive angled walls defining the architecture of the building to this day. But despite all the cutbacks and changes, everything opened as promised in 1975 to great fanfare, with parties, community events, and celebrations. This was the largest public recreation investment the city had ever seen, unmatched in scope to this day. Here's an aerial view from 1974 as construction was being completed. In the 5 decades since then, the Boys and Girls Club made several additions. The skate park by architect Maria Song was built next to the swim center, and a playground was added in the center of the park, but not much else has changed. This visionary expansion of public recreation throughout the city, designed by prominent local architects and centered in Sunrise Park, was a major civic achievement supported and celebrated by the Palm Springs community. It helped secure our reputation as a premier resort city. But what about Sunrise Park today? This deteriorated original lettering on the Leisure Center shows how 50 years of neglect and deferred maintenance have taken a toll. The Leisure Center is the Parks and Recreation Department headquarters and has active classrooms and daycare spaces. The pavilion is rented for a small fee to residents and is the scene of numerous social events in the summer farmers market. Although architecturally intact, both buildings are shabby, showing their age, not upgraded, and underutilized. The park landscaping is tired, almost all water-intensive turf and non-sustainable. Although Sunrise Park has the most natural shade of any city park, many of the trees are reaching the end of their lifespan and stressed. As an example of sad neglect, in the right inset photo near the swim center is a forgotten and forlorn memorial to well-known gay activist Morris Kite and another plaque for LGBT veterans killed in action. What little signage exists is inadequate and confusing. Here we have 3 different monument signs with 3 completely different names. Is it the Palm Springs Library Center, the Sunrise Plaza Library Center, or the Palm Springs Public Library? Would you guess that this is the main entrance to the park? Pavilion Way off Baristo is the only entrance to the parking lot, the pavilion, the leisure center, the swim center, the skate park, and the stadium, but it is completely unmarked. Vast expanses of empty lawn, bland tombstone-like signage, hard-to-find entrances, inadequate directional signage, and poorly placed public art don't convey a welcoming space for public recreation. It's no wonder that many city residents don't even know that Sunrise Park exists. But there is a way forward. I propose a four-part vision to renew Sunrise Park. Number one, historical protection. Number two, sustainability and solar. Number three, better signage and identity. And number four, restoration, renovation, and adaptive reuse. Number one, historical protection. With a rich history in the city's culture since the 1920s and 9 significant structures by prominent Palm Springs architects, Sunrise Park is the largest campus of its kind in the desert and a unique historical asset owned and controlled by the public that should be celebrated and protected. Historic designation opens the door to state and federal grants and foundation and private funding opportunities. Number two, sustainability and solar. Let's establish Sunrise Park as a leader in sustainability through targeted turf removal, desert landscaping, tree planting along the perimeter of the park, solar installations, and strategically located shade structures. Once enacted, that program can be extended to other city parks. A relatively easy way to identify and define the park is to update the street side perimeter areas with desertscape. As well as making it more appealing, it would create shade for the sidewalks and contribute to sustainability. There are a few trees around the perimeter of the park, but they are stressed and don't form much of a shade canopy. The Barristo perimeter is heavily used by students walking to the high school. Rethinking those perimeters would add tremendously to the public's perception and draw them into the park. Let's put the sun in Sunrise Park. It seems like a no-brainer that we should be creating shade and generating power via solar roofs, parking covers, and shade structures. Yet the city lags far behind in taking advantage of a resource we are known for. There were 3 comprehensive proposals in the 1970s to use solar installations for pool heating, and the technology has advanced considerably since then. The 500,000-gallon pool is heated and chilled to 80 degrees all year long, using a tremendous amount of non-renewable energy, probably the city's largest use of fossil fuel. Cool pavement coatings reduce the heat island effect, and coating the large parking lot, park roadways, and sidewalks would make a great test demonstration for future expansion onto more street surfaces in the city. They can be solid gray or done in patterns and colors. Phoenix has had great success where the coatings have reduced daytime temperatures on those roads and sidewalks by 10 to 12 degrees. Now, I found out since I put this together that it actually doesn't work on concrete. It's really for blacktop. So this would be primarily for the streets. What about something visionary? A section of Sunrise Park would be a great location for temporary or permanent art installations that use the sun and solar energy as the theme. Use public art to visibly demonstrate that Palm Springs is a leader in desert sustainability. What I also consider sustainability is activities and attractions that keep the park activated by residents. With the abundance of performing artists here, why not build a large-scale amphitheater like several neighboring Valley cities have done? Number 3, better signage and identity. Creating a visual identity with attractive directional and informational signage in landscaped beds would have a dramatic and immediate impact on the visibility and perception of the park. Wayfinding in the park with new signage identifying the facilities and directing visitors would inform the community about all the park has to offer. There is currently no directional signage whatsoever. A map and history of the park would educate the community about the legacy of investment in public recreation and guide them through the park's facilities. Let's create a real entrance by installing landscape monument signage on Barristo at Pavilion Way. The most visible expanse of park is along heavily trafficked Ramon Road, where large-scale impact could be created by installing a new monument sign, a swim center wall mural along the long blank wall of the pool, and sustainable desert landscaping. With a repainting and new signage, as well as attractive perimeter landscaping, the Mizell Center could be a prominent symbol of park renewal on this highly visible park corner at a major intersection. Number 4, restoration, renovation, and adaptive reuse. A number of current capital investments are committed to Sunrise Park. The library, JC building, and swim center renovations are far along in the planning process. The baseball stadium installed new lighting, and the Mizell Center completed a kitchen addition. Looking ahead, we have an opportunity to reimagine and transform the pavilion into something that can better serve the community's needs over the next 50 years. One idea is to transform this barn of a building into a first-class, flexible, multi-use entertainment and community space with advanced lighting, a modern sound system, better acoustics, and flexible seating. Palm Springs has multiple seated event spaces, but there are no large local venues with flexible, non-fixed seating. In both the Pavilion and Leisure Center, Wexler's multiple atriums are mostly sealed off and used as storage today. There are other rooms that are either not being adequately utilized or poorly reconfigured for their current use, along with inadequate kitchen and backstage facilities, all in sad condition, seriously in need of renovation. The forgotten atriums and storage rooms could be imaginatively readapted as a children's activity center, a makerspace, or community gathering lounge for readings or small meetings. When you tour these buildings, it becomes clear what enormous potential there is to rethink them for the future. A few vestiges of the original design vision can be seen in the door handles and atriums at the pavilion and the decorative equipment covers at the swim center. Despite being rather Spartan when they opened in 1975, most of what was built then is remarkably intact, with Cody's Library and Wexler's Pavilion and Leisure Center having architectural integrity worth saving. Good architecture and stylish design help drive the economy and support the Palm Springs brand. We deserve a world-class, desert-focused, sustainable Central Park that offers well-designed, well-planned, and well-cared-for recreational facilities that are free or low cost for the entire community. In a bit of serendipity, we have a unique opportunity in 2025, which is Sunrise Park's 50th anniversary. A celebration can connect disparate park projects and events, and it's an opportunity to clean up the parks, increase visibility and awareness. A Golden Sunrise celebration can reacquaint the entire community to the importance of our public spaces by hosting an inclusive citywide parks and arts festival. And importantly, it can be a catalyst to propel significant future investment throughout the park system with public support, informed by results of the new Parks Master Plan. This is a unique opportunity to kick off a vision for the future of Palm Springs public recreation while honoring the past. A tourism marketing campaign in tandem with the Golden Sunrise celebration could promote the wealth of outdoor recreation beyond the obvious golf and tennis to focus on health and wellness, fitness, and connection to nature. Adapting our outdoor recreational assets to the changing climate is the key to our community's future success and the continued health and welfare of our residents. In closing, our predecessors had the vision to greatly expand and support public parks and recreation, hiring the best local architects and designers to create free or low-cost assets for the entire community. Let's celebrate that achievement and continue the legacy for today's community and future generations. Thank you. You can follow the progress of this vision on the Facebook page with the QR code there. And there's a longer presentation that has some different components in it at the second QR code there as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone have any questions for Tom?
Just a comment, pretty amazing. Thank you for putting the presentation together and thank you for presenting to us. I really hope this becomes a reality, and it looks wonderful. Looks great.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks very much. Well, I need your help. So this is sort of all hands on deck project.
I've been advocate to put, like, I told this to so many people about having covered parking lots with solar panels, and you can use them as, for EV or even supply all the buildings, the city-run buildings. If you cannot put the solar panels above, just cover all those parking lots and with shade and will be solar.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that you mentioned, you put that in there. I've been envisioning it. I grew up in Abu Dhabi and it's another desert. And I see what they're doing. A lot of their buildings are sustainable and a lot of the parking lots are solar covered, even though it's an oil-rich country. So for us living here and we have the sun and not do any of that is just a waste of, resources. But thank you for putting that on.
Commissioner Kong?
How much does this fold into the master plan that they're working on for the Parks and Recreation Department?
Well, it's interesting, sort of a lot of things are coming together at once in slightly different arenas. So the Parks Master Plan is more of a community outreach to find out what the community is looking for. It's not directed specifically to any one park. I took this on because I swim at the swim center on a regular basis, and it always struck me as a graphic designer. I was triggered by the fact that, people didn't know where it was, they had no idea how to get there, there's no signage. So it started me down this path, and then I found out all this information. So that kind of happened organically on my side, and then it went to city council, and then the parks master plan started. So I'm hoping what happens when that is complete is that then they have a roadmap for some of the bigger community-based parks issues that come up. But I hope that it also points the way to, yes, we need to invest in all of our parks, and Sunrise Park is a really overlooked asset that we're not taking advantage of at all. And it's too bad because it does have the biggest facilities in the city for recreation, so. And there's also a parks master, a parks
Task force.
task force, yes, thank you. A task force, which Roy is on, and a number of other leaders in the city to talk about sort of the bigger vision of parks issues, which connects in some ways to the master plan, but it's more about sort of the bigger things the community wouldn't necessarily deal with.
As a person who utilizes it 3 to 5 days a week, it's not even maintained well in terms of cleanliness and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
And some of the rooms are used, the classrooms for the children.
Yeah.
And there are yoga classes and dance classes that are pretty regular in the leisure center, but the wallpaper's falling off. What doesn't even need wallpaper, but it's really embarrassing.
Well, I mean, the fact that it's been like that for 50 years, I mean, we haven't done anything in 50 years. And the community deserves something better is sort of my whole take on it.
So how did we fit into this?
I'm sorry?
How did we fit into this process of getting the improvements and we have to focus, of course, from a sustainability perspective, but you mentioned a lot of opportunities for that to come to the fore.
Right, well, certainly solar, and dealing with the sustainability of the landscape, because there really is no desertscape there. It's all grass and trees. Most of the trees are stressed, so there are a lot of issues, big issues. I think my goal here is to just get as many people on board with the background so they understand the history and understand what's going on there, to then, each group being able to take it, in a step that they are able to take it in. The swim center is an interesting one because in the late 70s, when there was the second gas crisis, there were 3 very serious proposals to do solar. And they got to the point of being funded and approved and ready to go, and then for some reason they fell apart. So the pool, no one can quite tell me how much fossil fuel the pool uses to keep it heated and cooled all year long. I think it's probably a tremendous number. So it would be great to have a big initiative to let's do a big solar project that could actually heat the pool. And what an incredible story that would be for our community to have this very positive, sustainable swim center. That's, it's a marvel. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful pools around. So that would be a good thing to focus on, but I have no idea how you go about that.
And as part of the answer, the reason I wanted Tom to speak was is that there's some obvious sustainability things that can be done in the park. And other things that we've been talking about in our subcommittees and in the commission meetings. So I think just introducing us to some of these new issues is important because as opportunities come up, we might be able to make some input. Also grants, are going to be available from different sources. So I think they are now and maybe over the years. And so that's something that we can keep in mind, but it's, I think it's good for us to have heard this information and then be able to act on it as time goes on. Commissioner Graham.
I guess my question is awesome. Great, I
Thank
seen
you.
this last fall. We are here today. Is this already been presented to Measure J? What all commissions have already seen this and are looking at it and been working on all this right now?
Well,
Let's see.
Parks and Rec and now the new, this task force, will be dealing with it a lot. I mean, if it was brought up at the first meeting, I think certainly it's gonna be my focus in the future meetings. The mayor and some of the city council members are behind it. The problem is, the city has a lot of big projects on their plate right now, so it's kind of hard to say, oh, hey, let's do another, $50 million project. So it's gonna take some work and some time, but it's kind of gotta have everybody on board. So that's sort of my hope, is just to get this message out to as many groups as possible. And I don't know who else should be seeing it and should be, a part of this. The Arts Commission, I've been wanting to show it to them because I think there's some issues with that.
Weren't you at one
But-
PS?
I'm sorry,
Were you at one PS?
1 PS, I did
Yes,
show it at 1
that's
PS,
right.
yes,
We have seen, okay.
right.
Yeah.
I see.
So, yeah, so I'm just trying to keep the gears moving in whatever way possible.
Thank you.
Commissioner Alexander.
So it's a massive proposal you're doing, but I'm thinking that the landscaping might be like step one. It would be a visual thing for folks to see and start getting more interested in improving more of the area.
Yeah. That's sort of my take, well, partly because I want the signage. So
Yeah,
if
the
you just did the
signage.
perimeter landscaping and the signage within the scheme of things, it's not that big of a project. That would make a huge difference in the perception of the park and it would draw attention to it. So, I mean, this is not gonna happen overnight. This is gonna take years of effort and funding and all kinds of things. And the other problem is that you've got a lot of separate entities there. So you have the baseball team, you have the library, you have the Boys and Girls Club, you have the Mizell Center, you have Parks and Rec. So you've kind of got these different people in their silos, and the challenge is to get everyone on the same page, to work together. I was a little annoyed to see in the library new plan, they want to add some parking on the south side of the library. So that's taking away some of the park. So, no one's really talking about that, and as a sustainability issue, that seems to be, it could be an issue, but also it's just, there's no bigger vision of what we want that park to be. So before we encroach on it, let's think about what we want that to be first, and the parking could go on the north side of that building. So, anyway.
Commissioner Warren.
Thank you for the presentation. I really loved it.
Thank you.
I think the library and now the farmers market indoors are my favorite place to kind of, we are thinking about the sun and we are talking about shade, and at the same time, it's important to think when it rains, it pours for us. So when we are doing I really love the idea of having solar panels for the parking lot and having cooling, coolant.
Yeah, the cool pavement.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking like, what if we add permeable pavers, we have to break the parking lot anyway, because it does not work on the concrete, and put permeable pavers, so when it rains, the water can refill our aquifer, go into underground rather than it going into the
Right.
storm drain, and on top of it, we can do the cooling thing. And again, when we are thinking about, okay, how do we see this in the next 100 years, 50 years? Well, after 50 years, there are gonna be new groups sitting like this, and they're gonna talk about, well, they made changes 50 years ago, and now we have to make some changes. So how do we think about the sustainability of that specific 38 acres property, not every time depending on, hey, where can we get the money from? And you presented in your presentation those signage, like really beautiful, attractive signage. What if we make them digital and rent it out to other people, or, we can display what's going on in each 9 buildings of that, so maybe that can generate a little bit of income. That can be useful to maintain the park as. They are speaking about how the park is not maintained, well, do we have enough employees to do that, or how are we paying that? So if we can create more ideas to generate income. That will make it easier for us to maintain the park in the coming 50 years.
Right.
And I think I speak a lot for water. So I'm thinking like, oh, when we are doing these changes, what about we install rainwater harvesting system in the parking lots and for the existing buildings? So we are slowing down the water when it rains and making sure rather than it's going into the storm drain, it's actually staying under our soil. For your question, I guess probably our chair or that, Director McCloy can answer. Maybe most of the energy that we are using to heat the swimming pool is coming from, I don't know what percentage is coming from renewable sources. So probably it's not coming, all of it is from fossil fuels, or maybe we don't have that information.
I just don't have the information, but I can't, pools are very difficult to heat with just with solar alone. So I'm sure that, it's mostly gas, there's probably some electric in there too. And even if you did solar, you'd probably still have to have some of that. But, to sort of address what you're talking about, if you said, okay, let's make Sunrise Park a model for sustainability. And what are all the dreams you would want to have for sustainability? Permeable pavement, solar canopies, solar shade, solar art, desert landscaping, all of these things, if you sort of put that all together and say, let's do that in Sunrise Park and make that the center for how Palm Springs is going to move forward and deal with climate change. And it's a lot easier when you take one big place like that and say, this is what we want to have as the focus for our future vision of what Palm Springs can be. And then you do all these demonstrations in there, and you see how it all works. There is some blacktop in the Pavilion Way. So why don't you, start by coating that with some of this cool pavement, see if it works, and then try it out on some neighboring streets, and it grows from there. Do perimeter landscaping, the permeable pavement is a great idea. So all of those things can be put into one place and be much more effective than if you do a little project here and a little project there and a little project there, but you make this like a real sort of center for this study of what sustainability can be. So.
Thank you.
Chair, I can just speak very quickly to Commissioner Walker's question on the fuel source for the pool. So you're both right that it's a little unknowable, but we can definitely figure it out. I will say from our greenhouse gas inventory in 2021, we did identify that pool heating is, I believe, the single largest use of natural gas in Palm Springs, and that's for all pools, like not necessarily just the city pool. So I would not be shocked if it is a relatively high consumer of natural gas. We also have a cogeneration facility that runs a steam loop here in Palm Springs, which is kind of a unique little thing. I'm not sure how much of that heat is going to the pool, but something we can look into and something I'm now curious to find the answer out to. But just note for future projects, pool heating, big use of gas here in Palm Springs.
Anything else? Any other questions or?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
It's obvious that there's a lot of things for us to think about in the future, and there may be opportunities to act on some of these suggestions as well. So it was great that he was here tonight.
Kind of like give an incentive to curb and conversion, give an incentive to homeowners for convert their pool heaters to some more sustainable or something.
And that's something that I've been seeing more and more about in the news as well.
Yeah, that's something I actually didn't include in this staff memo. I forgot to. There was a recent air quality management district basically ruling that is going to require a lot of buildings in Southern California, which is the South Coast Air Quality Management District, to start moving to electric hot water heaters and pool heaters over the next like 20 years. So it's something that I'd like to do a brief presentation about in the fall, once we kind of get a little more information about it and get some examples of compliant products and things like that. But I think we're going to see a big move in that direction, but there's still a lot of, like, the technology's improved even over the last 2 to 3 years. But there's still a lot of confusion and questions and stuff that folks have, so. I'm going to make a note to myself to put that on my future agenda requests, is to do a short, presentation about that EQMP rule.
Thank you. So moving on, the next item in the agenda is public comments. Does anybody online or in the room have public comments? No. Looks like there are none, so we'll move on to chair's comments, which is the next item. I have a couple of things that I'd like to bring up. The first one is a report on the June 4th Airport Master Plan Open House. And I talked about this at the Climate Action Subcommittee meeting last week, and I'll just go into it a little, in a little less depth tonight, just to bring up some of the issues to the people here. And some of us from the commission were there, and I know that the staff members were also at the open house for the Airport Master Plan. And the city council had suggested or had requested that meeting because they wanted to receive additional public comments on the master plan, especially with respect to parking and traffic concerns, which have been brought up by a lot of people. I think we know Director McCloy provided an overview of the master plan options at a previous commission meetings. And it's the FAA that required the master plan, which is used as a planning tool to guide the airport's development in the coming decades. And there was considerable discussion about the new rental car and parking facility. The rental car and parking facility is planned to be 4 stories tall and located north of the terminal, although there were options for other locations for the building, which may include shuttle service. And public parking spaces will increase from approximately 1,700 to 2,700, and rental car spaces will increase from 2,300 to about 3,700. And a lot of these requirements are driven by the FAA, which has requirements for parking based upon historical peak parking months in the airport. So these are some things that have to be considered. It's also, it was also pointed out that 71% of the passengers coming to Palm Springs through the airport rent cars, which seems to be a high percentage. So these are all things that really have been of interest to us in the Climate Action Subcommittee, where we're looking at reducing traffic, where we're looking at reducing the number of cars and miles traveled and so forth. So there may be opportunities for us to make input to solutions for the parking and traffic situation as we go forward. The airport management and commission are focused on the facility, which they're required to upgrade. And I think some of what needs to be done to deal with the parking and traffic, goes outside of the airport and really affects the other cities besides Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley. So more to come on that. And I just wanted to point out that on June 6th, the city council had a special meeting where they appointed members to commissions. And Vice Chair Don Barrett was reappointed to a second term on the Sustainability Commission. And one new commissioner, Erin Boyd, was appointed, and she'll be at our July meeting. So, any questions on Chair's comments or comments? Then we go on to subcommittee reports, and the first is the Standing Subcommittee on Waste Reduction.
We were not able to meet in May due to people being out of town. We'll be meeting in June, and it'll be the same agenda, which is to discuss the issues with, or not just discuss the proposals that came from Ned Barker.
Yeah.
Thank you. About waste stream management and various issues like that. So.
And that meeting will be June 27th, which is
Right,
the combined June and July meeting.
Yeah.
The next subcommittee report is the Standing Subcommittee on Climate Action, and that's me again. We had a busy meeting last week. I haven't written up the report. You'll get it with the materials for the next commission meeting, but I have a few things that I can report on from my notes. The first is that we had a presentation by Juliet, who's our sustainability fellow, and it was sponsored by the Inland Regional Energy Network, whom we heard from last month. And there was a lot of information that she provided. In her first year, she's developed 6 goals for energy efficiency in buildings and 4 goals for energy efficiency incentive programs. And she's been reappointed for a second year, so she'll be following up in the second year on meeting those goals. She worked with the city staff to perform energy audits in all 5 fire stations. She conducted an energy efficiency survey for homeowners and residents. I think many of you probably took that survey. There were a total of 100 responses, and the part of the responses, which she summarized, were actions that homeowners and residents have taken to increase energy efficiency. The biggest ones were use of LEDs and smart thermostats. The biggest barrier to energy upgrades was cost, as you might expect. And she's going to be working with IREN and city stakeholders to develop an energy action plan. So thank you. We talked about air quality, which is a topic that we've talked about for several months. And Director McCloy and her staff will put air quality information on social media that Ben has been working on. And we'll also work with city staff to put air quality information on Engage Palm Springs. I think in the last few days, on the television news, there's been a lot more reporting about air quality because of the winds, the dust, the fires, and so forth. So I think it's more and more important. We felt that it was important to get that information out to people. And finally, Sustainability Specialist Wheeler made a presentation about EPA community change grants, which are under the Inflation Reduction Act. And the major goal of those grants is to fund community-driven pollution reduction and climate resiliency projects. And the grants require a partnership between a community-based nonprofit organization and a local government. And target areas are disadvantaged communities. And Director McCloy and her staff have met with the Economic Development Office to identify projects and partners. And some examples are community gardens and buildings in Sunrise Park, which is something you just heard about. So that may be an opportunity to do something about those buildings. And grants between $10 million and $20 million will be awarded. And the application deadline is November 21st. So that's something that we continue to work on by our staff. And we have an opportunity to make input on as well. So any comments or questions on that report? And the next subcommittee report is our ad hoc subcommittee on bird strikes. And that's Commissioner Foote.
Oh, that's me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we got to meet for the first time, Commissioner Alexander and Barrett, and our idea for the first meeting was just to brainstorm ideas about what we can do with the committee and where we'd like to see it go. And I think there was 2 main things that we kind of decided, which is one could be an informational campaign in the future, just about how to prevent bird strikes on windows. That'd be directed more towards residential buildings and residents, and how they can kind of bird proof their properties and their windows. And a second thing that we might want to see in the future is developing an ordinance for commercial buildings and developments. A couple things that came out of that was I had talked to I forgot his name, but whoever's in charge of the College of the Deserts, West Campus. I forgot his name.
Scott Eck.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. I was like, "Ugh, it's
Yeah,
right there."
so I've reached out to some of these big projects that are going on, and they were like, you just missed it, we could have done something and incorporated bird-friendly glass into our developments. But we've already, decided on our materials, our building materials, and so I think it's something important for the future that we can come up with ordinance and guidance, for some of these big projects, that they are willing to adapt it. They're very interested in it, but they just don't know anything about it. So those are 2 main areas I think we'd like to focus on, is just an educational campaign for residents and a possible ordinance in the future for commercial developments. And there are already some really good ordinances out there. Tucson, Commissioner Barrett mentioned this, and Tucson has an ordinance already that are, similar climates and bird migrational pattern, coming through their area. And, so we can adapt other ordinances that are out there. San Francisco has a really good ordinance also. So there's already models out there that we can use and templates to enact it in our city. So they don't have to start from scratch. The planning department and whoever else would take this on, can use other examples that are good examples. And we can do some research on that and supply that. We can also help with educational campaigns and, our social media coordinator, helping come up with, language and images to help, sort of get that word out there and how to, bird proof your houses. I went through the process myself of bird proofing my house, so I know what works, what doesn't work, what's aesthetically pleasing, what's not aesthetically pleasing. So I can help with that in the future too.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Commissioner Frick? Commissioner Walker.
I have a question. Are we looking into whether the way we are pruning and cutting down the trees have any impact on this bird strikes? Because as soon as, my neighbors chop down or prune their palm trees and other trees, I can see more birds in my backyard trying to do something. So is that one of the reasons that's going to be where people don't have education on how to properly prune their trees or maintain the trees? And that might be destroying the birds' migration pattern because they don't have any more trees that they can rely on.
It's a great question. I don't know how knowable that would be, like, that might be a little bit hard to measure. However, as part of the tree ordinance work, I think we are gonna be putting out a lot more educational material and recommending specific better management practices, so maybe we kind of solve that problem by accident. And it's a really interesting question. I just don't even.
Yeah, this is
I
a
don't
good
know
question. I
the
think, tree trimming affects bird nesting. And so, a lot of birds, have their little chicks and eggs in the spring. And so we would probably want to maybe have something about, don't trim your trees at certain periods of the year because you're going to be cutting down nests at the same time. So that could affect the bird population, I think, is just the timing of trimmings. Yeah.
Is there a data on how many like bird strikes in Palm Springs or in the region?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's no data about bird strikes specifically in Palm Springs. There's between 1 billion and 3 billion in the United States per year. And it's one of the biggest killers of birds in the nation. But we know just anecdotally that we're a big migrational not pattern, what's it called?
Highway.
Migrational route. Migrational route comes through Coachella Valley. And so there's a lot of birds that strike windows in the Coachella Valley because there's just a lot of birds here in the spring especially. So what I'm gonna recommend with evaluation is coming up with a way that people can evaluate their own home. And there's certain windows that will be worse than other windows. Some windows won't have bird strikes at all. Some windows will have a lot of bird strikes. So there's a way to kind of evaluate your personal house. Some houses don't have any bird strikes.
Yeah.
And so there's really more like problem areas.
I was wondering in the future, like, when you try to have an ordinance, we wanna have something to support it, like, as a debt or something. It'll improve the ask, I guess. But
Yeah,
you're
I
right,
can
it
add
does.
to that because out there at Maryland, we have like 7,000 olive trees. But some of the houses are that modern design where there's glass in one end, glass in the other, into a bird it looks like. And I just ping my neighbors and things, and they get a lot of bird strikes because the birds just see right straight through.
Yeah.
So houses with that kind of design most likely will get hit. And the other issue is sometimes the birds will hit and it knocks them out and they get up and go, and they may die later, you don't know. In my case, I'm on a 1-story and it hit my glass door and died right there. But some of the neighbors it hits and they get up and they go, but they might die later, you don't know.
So we pulled a website up on the screen here, which is a very macabre name, dbird.org, as in dead. So you'll remember it forever. So this is like a crowdsourced database tool, where if you have a bird strike or you find a bird that's dead from a bird strike, you can upload it here. So maybe this is something that we might share with the community just to start getting even some anecdotal data, because it is a little bit hard to
Yeah.
universally track, and there's better data on like kind of taller buildings where there might be cameras and different things like that, but this is a tool that I know they encourage people in most of the cities that have ordinances. There's a lot of encouragement to report things on this tool, so might be something that as people start to notice it, maybe we just start to build a little bit of data here ourselves. And then you can filter it by zip code and different stuff.
Any other questions? Commissioner Barrett?
And my part of the conversation on where we go on the bird strikes was that what we need to do at first is really increase awareness of it, which we can do through working through a public educational campaign in some way, shape, or form, which can be using the website and material that comes through here to start making this an issue. Because trying to change policy is going to be, or trying to come up with, my brain isn't working, ordinance, thank you, is going to take a lot of time. So we need to start on the groundwork of increasing the awareness of this and having people in that process. We hadn't talked about this before, but from what Ken had said, having people citing or noting how much they're observing it would help us have a sense of how much it is happening. Is it involved in the actual design of the homes? And apparently it is. So I think if we work on increasing awareness first, it is where we most need, it is our first agenda.
Yeah, to start, yeah, just building on what Commissioner Barrett says, is that's what we talked about in our meeting too. Is that's kind of like the low hanging fruit, is just making people aware of it, because people are just not even aware of it. And, just anecdotally, I've talked to many friends that do have bird strikes, and many of them, especially in the spring, including, when you have glass railings and walls. A lot of people on golf courses have those. And you can even have hawks and birds of prey striking those and dying. So it is a big problem, and anecdotally, just talking to people, you hear about it all the time. And it's just the way to get people aware of it, and it is a problem, and it's a huge problem for birds and our biosphere in general. So that's something we just want to, take care of.
Yeah, I believe the education will gender up people saying, oh, that's happened to me. I think we'll start getting a number of, because when I asked at my complex, it was like, oh, yeah, that's happened. I didn't hear anything until I asked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just going to what Commissioner Alexander said, is that birds mostly will strike and then fly away and die somewhere else. Or if they die where they strike, something will carry them away, like cats, coyotes, something else, and so you never even observe it. You can hear like, what was that sound on the window? Oh, that was nothing, and it's another dead bird. So.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much to the subcommittee. I think you've made quite a bit of progress so far, and should we plan to have a report next month as well?
Yeah, I think we can maybe come up with some educational ideas.
Okay.
Next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Next step.
The next item on the agenda is the director's report. Director McCloy.
Sure, okay, so as I was mentioning to some of the early arrivers here, this has been a ducks paddling furiously under the surface month. So you'll look at the report and you'll see a lot of things that look kind of the same, but we've been very busy. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of things for the commission's attention for some of our summer priorities and some things that are coming up. So I'm going to start with events and happenings. So as I mentioned before, the next SCOUR meeting will be on June 27th, which is kind of our combined June and July. I appreciate the commission's accommodating the fact that I was out of the country. So thank you, everyone. And then Climate Action is reconvening in September, taking a little summer break. So the farmers market is now back indoors for the season. Christian and Ben did a table for us on Saturday, and Juliet was also there as part of her volunteer engagement work with Fine Food Bank. She was on a different team, so
No, I'm kidding. All boats, rising tide. The next time that we'll be at the farmer's market is planned for Saturday, July 13th. Is the next time that we'll be there. Our next shredding and e-waste event is going to be in October. Palm Springs Disposal, as you all saw at the last event, is kind of taking the driver's seat on these. Usually it's the second or third weekend of October.
I should note on our agenda for Scour is the location for.
Right, potentially changing locations for a slightly better traffic flow for shredding. And then some more near-term events. So, Ben and Juliet have been working hard on an induction cooking demo and energy resource fair, that we're gonna be hosting this summer. So it looks like that date is going to be Friday, July 12th, and probably going to be in the late afternoon, early evening. We'll let you all know, it's also not the only time we're gonna do this. So it's kind of a test run with a smaller audience in the summer. And we're gonna see how it goes. And there's a couple of different things, and I'll let the team talk about this more maybe, actually not during next meeting this week. I don't know, does anybody else want to talk about this, or you want me to just get it somewhere? Alright. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, they can really scheme in a way. So, this kind of started with the idea of doing kind of a somewhat interactive like demonstration of the capabilities of induction stoves. So a lot of people have questions when they're thinking about electrifying their homes. You know, cooking is one of the major sources of natural gas use or fossil fuel use in our homes. Induction cooking is way more efficient and safer and easier to use than, you know, natural gas, and also the kind of the classic electric resistance, which like I have in my ancient apartment where the coils glow red and don't really, they're off or all the way on. And so induction is kind of a superior technology approach. And so these demos are a good way to introduce people to the fact that like, hey, if you've got kids, you know, you take the pan off and that's not hot anymore on that surface because it works by conducting energy, like magnets basically, between pans and the stove surface. Or if you have a parent where maybe you might be worried about them leaving gas on at home, like this might be a really great alternative for them. It also heats up boiling water in about a third of the time, etc. So there's a lot of these different demos that cities have done. So that's going to be kind of a core aspect of the event. But we also want this to be an opportunity for anybody who's having questions or needs assistance, or wants to know about kind of like taking more sustainable action. So we'll have representatives from utilities there to get people signed up. We'll be getting people signed up for discounts for waste there on site. We'll have representatives from some of our different groups here in the city who provide those services to the community to help people make sustainable choices. So it's our first resource fair, and I'm very excited. So that is probably going to be on July 12th in the afternoon. We don't know where it's going to be yet, but we will tell you as soon as we do. And if anybody has any other organizations who you think would be a good fit for the resource fair, please reach out to Ben and Juliet. We'd be happy to include them as well. It's a more than merrier kind of vibe for this. Next thing, which is even sooner, which is next week. I know I've been talking about this for a couple of months. The CEAC conference, which is the California Clean Energy Collaborative Conference, is next week. The bulk of the events for the conference are on Tuesday and Wednesday. It is free for you all to sign up as long as you use your commissioner email address. So you just click on the link in the staff report, it'll take you to the registration page. You know, you can browse through the program and see if there's anything that looks interesting to you. And then we're also gonna be hosting kind of like a networking event for staff who are coming in for the conference, and, you know, various local folks who all are invited. One thing I have to note is we have to make sure we don't accidentally hit a quorum at these events. So only 5 people can come at any one time. So if you're interested in coming, maybe just send me a note. You know, it's not required. We're just gonna do it at Las Palmas Brewing, Palm Canyon to set aside like the back area for us. We are not paying for it also because that's really impossible for me to put on my purchasing card, and I do not make enough money to buy room and drinks. So I apologize.
Is it all in the same room?
It's kind of an elongated place.
So,
Why would a quorum
I
be an
mean-
issue? That's why I'm.
Because it Brown Act rules,
but we're not making any decisions.
but you could be. It's more of the perception
Yeah,
of
it's a-
the fact that like technically where 6 of you are gathered in a room is a meeting. So, you know, we try to kind of play by the rules, but you know, if folks all email me and everybody really wants to come, we can rotate, seriously. You know, maybe, you know, if somebody wants to take it early and somebody wants to take it late. So just shoot me a note if you wanna come, and that way I can kind of keep track of the general plans. There is technically an outside and an inside also, though it is gonna be hot next week, so we're gonna figure it out. So that's June 24th, Monday at 6 o'clock.
And then summer reading. So wanted to bring your attention to the next two events that we're co-programming with the library at summer reading. And they both have a kind of like, here's how we're gonna make this happen bent. So on July 3rd, which I know is an extraordinarily convenient day to do an event. So Juliet is gonna be our master of ceremonies for a building energy efficiency panel. So we're gonna have Dana McAllister, who's our chief building official here, who's gonna talk through the sort of how to get your project executed from like a buildings perspective, you know, what's in the energy code that people should be thinking about. What is the energy code, you know, various things, and then kind of how to work through the permitting process. And then David Friedman, who you all know as a former commissioner and also our DCE program lead, is going to be talking about his own experience, doing an energy efficiency renovation of his own home. So really kind of thinking about that from a practical perspective of like, here's what I learned, here's what was easy, here's what was hard. So that's gonna be on July 3rd. And then we'll have an actually very timely birds presentation. So Commissioner Brick, thanks for volunteering to be part of that, right? Did that not happen? Okay.
That's right. I was volunteered for that, wasn't
Yeah. But I think, you know, to the extent that you also want to kind of talk about that journey that you've been on to sort of bird proof your own home, I think that's gonna be, we're kind of doing the kind of the policy framing and then the how to get it done. So we also have an expert on bird migration joining us from College of the Desert to talk about just sort of like, where are the birds and who are the birds? I'm gonna give a little bit of perspective on just kind of how cities think about these kind of things, filling in for Christian on that one. And then Commissioner Frick, whatever you want to say is gonna be awesome, so thanks. And so that's gonna be on July 17th. So again, no accidental quorum. If you want to come, send me a note so I can just keep track of numbers. And that's it for events. I'm gonna pause briefly before I do a quick couple of project highlights. Does anyone have any questions on events and upcoming things?
What's the end time of the CCE?
Of the event,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna kick anybody out. I'm gonna go home at 8:30. That's what time I will leave, but if people want to stay, no PM. I appreciate you that you think I'm that fun, but no. That's- So yeah, probably around 8:30 or 9, I would imagine it would be, but it's very informal, kind of like a drop in whenever you want, kind of thing. So if you want to meet some folks from around the state who are doing this work, I don't know how many people are gonna come, it might just be me, and if you want to just hang out with me, you can do that. So, and maybe some of the staff as well. But yeah, so 8:39-ish. Question?
I just heard the phrase energy auditor in there somewhere. And is there energy auditors in Coachella Valley
This
yet?
is a
Because I think
really good
you
question.
brought that up.
So
Right?
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah.
Commissioner Walker brought that up.
So-
Last time, I've been thinking about that ever since you brought that up, because I was looking for somebody online, just like you were, and I couldn't find anybody, and there's
So-
rebates for it, and you can't
Yeah.
get the rebates, so.
So I think many of us have kind of come to the same place, which is there's a variety of different Department of Energy websites which post listings of certified energy auditors, and they either show one or none energy auditors. So Juliet did a little bit of outreach when we were looking for folks to help us with the fire stations project, and we've identified 3-ish in the area, but this is something that we've been really pushing with our IRN colleagues, with College of the Desert, because it's a relatively, like the certification is relatively attainable, like it's not necessarily something that someone has to, you know, go through an entire like apprenticeship program to do, et cetera. It's something that we're gonna really need a lot of in the valley, so there are not enough, by any stretch of the imagination, and we've identified it as a huge potential workforce growth opportunity, for the region, so I think that's something that we really wanna see more of, and I think you'll probably hear more from us in the next coming months about just like being an energy auditor. please.
Yes, yes.
It's a cool job. So, yeah, similar problem. Any other questions on events and happenings? I've just got a couple more little highlights. Okay, cool. So just a couple of additional little things. Most of this is in the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that are on the report. I apologize for the fact that I did not finish the section about the airport. I must have been editing this at 2 different times and did not realize I didn't finish the sentence. But Chair Clark gave us the update on that. We've talked about most of the other things. The one thing I wanted to mention for our EV charging crew, we are making a relatively significant change to our downtown fast chargers at the art museum. So this is the first time that we're gonna be adding NACS standard plugs to those chargers. So the fast chargers currently have two different plugs on them. And neither of them work with Teslas, which is so cute. And that's kind of just been how the charging sector has evolved. They've evolved with these different non-compatible charging standard plugs for a number of years. After a number of years in the standards development process, which I know we've got a couple of engineers in the room, the standards development process is in some ways excruciating, but also just like a beautiful example of human cooperation, in that it's almost impossible, but, they've come up with a new charging standard plug, which is the NACS, which is North American Charging Standard. It is a simpler plug, so if you've used the fast chargers, you'll note that there's like clips and like 4 different plug parts, and then like the cord weighs like 1,000,000 pounds, and it's just like, it's not elegant. The NACS cable is a little bit more streamlined, also helps us solve the problem, or one of the problems, which is a lot of the components at those downtown chargers get broken a lot. We see a lot of people who are first time charging users down there. It's just a really high use, high turnover station. So they get a little beat up, and then it costs us like $2,500 at minimum and 6 weeks lead time to replace those plugs. So we're getting the new NACS plugs on 2 of those stations. Which means that Teslas will now be able to use some of them. We are gonna have some growing pains, because that means that some people like myself, who use the type of plug that's being replaced, the CCS, which is the most difficult and most likely to break, are not going to have access to the CCS plugs at those stations. There are adapters available to go from CCS to NACS. A number of American automakers are adopting that standard, and so have made those adapters for free to their vehicle owners, but not everyone has adopted that yet. So I am bracing for some angry phone calls, but to the extent that anyone is hearing about this or having experience when you're trying to charge your car or anything like that, I'm curious to hear that, in case it's not making it to us, just to see how we can manage this transition. I think in the long run, it's gonna be better, and you're gonna start to see more charging stations make the switch over time. But in the short term, it's gonna be a little spicy. So that's something that we're gonna be working on over the next couple weeks. We're doing a whole bunch of other stuff, which is fun, end of the fiscal year next week, so please don't call me next week. You can if you want, you guys can call me, no one else can.
Aren't
Yes,
there a bunch of Tesla chargers only down
there are,
in the other?
in the basement.
Yeah.
There is a big bank of Tesla chargers. We actually did ask Tesla about a year ago to put a bigger sign up for those, because we were still seeing, it's on the Tesla map, and they'll come and then they see the charge points and they think that's their charger. And a lot of people would get frustrated trying to plug their Tesla into the thing and they have the wrong plug. So they did put a bigger sign, which helped, but then Tesla laid off everyone who worked on charging, so there's also that problem. But so far, I mean, we see pretty good uptime and maintenance rates for those stations, so, hoping this, and so now we're just expanding. I mean, that is by far the largest, type of EV that is registered here in Baltimore.
I didn't hear everything, just could not understand it, but in any case, we're having a lot of level 2 chargers being installed.
Sure, that's correct.
In my mobile home park
Oh,
and in some of the condo complexes around our neighborhood. I don't know if that's something you want to know about or.
yeah, I'd love to know about that. Yeah, we don't always get, I mean, so anyone who installs a level 2 charger or any charger on private property has to get a permit. But we don't necessarily like get a notification. So if you all hear of like, a bank of chargers being installed or something, if you hear about,
So no one I know knows about the permit, but anyway.
oh, interesting, well, there is a permit, and I'm just gonna leave it at that and say I'm happy to answer questions from anyone who wants to know more.
Pass that along.
Yeah, happy to facilitate, any of that. It's a relatively straightforward install for the level 2 charger, so that's probably why, people may not know about the permit, because it's pretty easy to do.
I also spoke with Jackie. She did mention that, whoever purchases, if you have a contractor, they go directly to get the permit for them. So you may not even know that they got it. That's coming from the permit.
I know the contractor.
Well, we would be happy to connect them to the permits department if necessary. And so, yeah, as you all are hearing about that, that's great. I know we've talked about some educational resources we want to do, because I feel like almost every week, one of us is showing people how to charge. So we do a lot of charging and instructing. Thinking to maybe do some resources on that. But happy to answer any questions on that or anything else that's in the staff comment. I know I've taken a little bit longer than usual this week. Okay.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of information here. See, the next item on the agenda is new business, and the one thing that we have there is feedback on the June 17th, that was yesterday's meeting with the city council. We thought when we made up the agenda the last time that, you know, it might be interesting for those of you who attended to make any comments about whatever you heard from the council or other commissions. So I'll open it up to anybody who wants to make comments about the meeting yesterday.
Well, I guess
Yes, sir.
I thought it went very well. I was impressed that they had so much of a vegan selection for vegans. Which I was happy to see, but I didn't know what to expect on the second part of the meeting. And then I was a little surprised to find out it was a regular city council meeting, but special for the commission. But other than that, I thought it went fine. I was impressed with the way they ran it. I thought it went very well.
Thank you. Commissioner Porter.
One comment I have is maybe not put the commissioners, like commissions in all different tables and just let everybody sit whatever. You know, that makes you kind of mingle with other commissioners and talk and,
I mean, I think they divided like us. They
yeah,
Divided us up, and I think that was their way of trying to mix it up.
yeah,
But I think it's because of the
because of the Brown Act.
Brown Act.
Yeah. Maybe,
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
It might be, that's
Maybe
a
not.
reasonable assumption, I'm just not for sure.
Because everybody was mixed.
And I
I
just,
think it'd be good, sorry, just, I agree with mixing it up, but you could have one commission member at each table and you get to know, and I enjoyed it because I was able to chat with fellow commission members and get to know them a little better, in a little more time because these meetings are, we're in and out. But then you get to know other commissions and what they're doing, and Commissioner Graham had mentioned, it's like, how do you do like a icebreaker to have everybody talk about something about their commission, and then you get to know how you might be able to interact with those different commissions and what they're doing. There's some on that list I didn't know existed, so it was kind of interesting to see.
I just wanted to make a comment on the Brown Act. That might be a good question for the city clerk.
There actually is a training, which I think all of you probably got the email about. It's a refresher for you all, and so you don't have to go, but it's required for anyone new. And it's required for me and Ben, so we will be there, and so we can ask that question Thursday morning.
I wasn't there last night, but when we did this 2 years ago, we were all at one table.
Oh, wow.
And
Yes.
I like the idea of mixing and getting to know how the other commissions work. So I like that, what you're talking about having them more mixed up.
Commissioner Graham.
I have been talking for at least a year and a half about how finding a way for all the commissions to be able to communicate with each other, not just us here talking about it, but I've been to other commission meetings and actually mentioned it here and there. And then, of course, Mayor Bernstein brought it up and brought it forward, and here we are. And one of the main things that I've heard the last year is Councilmember Holstage even saying, and you guys said it this evening, there are all these other commissions that are working in their own silos. And using the word silo is like, let's figure out a way to get rid of that word. And we all try and figure out a way to actually bring us all together. I think that in that meeting last night was awesome, but yes, 2 to 3 commissioners at one table, maybe a larger table, and actually finding a way to be able to communicate with those other and introducing ourselves of what we have actually done on our commission also. I think it was 2 hours. But maybe, I know it'd be nuts to have a 3-hour. And probably people would think I was nuts if you think about that, but to be able to talk about my specific goals that I helped that for that year, or listen to somebody else talk about their own goals or what they accomplished in that last year. And it's just simple little things like that we're actually interacting with those other commissioners. And then we're paying attention to what they're doing, because that conversation created me listening and watching what the commission, the airports commission is doing next week. And then we go, oh, and then we as sustainability go, oh, that's our input that's actually working, our comment was. And that's where I'm kind of like, I thought it was awesome. And always cool.
I will just agree with everybody that that's like my first time going to any of these events regarding the city. I think we need to think about if that's the only event we are doing for the city boards and commissions, why don't we celebrate it better? Just like everything else. You know, that's the only one time we are meeting. Yes, it can go from 3 hours to 5 hours or like a whole day, which is not appropriate, but in my imagination, that's better, right? The swimming pool breaks and everything. We can talk better, but yes, I felt the same way because we are there for dinner and I got my dinner plate and I want to talk to somebody else. Do I want to eat my chicken or talk to that person? So it was a little uncomfortable with dinner plates and networking with other commissions. Probably if we have like half an hour time where there is no food but soft drinks or something where we can go around, talk to other people, will make it better.
Just had a comment on the interaction amongst commissions. I thought it was significant, last night that several of the speakers, like the chairs, mentioned things that they're doing with other commissions. And I did that as well, because we are interacting with other commissions. There was one point though, where somebody from Public Arts referred to something that we're helping them with, and I don't think any of us had any idea what it is. So we'll have to follow up on that.
We, sorry, excuse me, I admire our Public Arts Commission's desire to make things happen by speaking them into existence.
Thanks. Maybe a comment on one of the other comments that was made. I think it's, you know, at the first part of the meeting where we're sitting down and eating, it's hard to know who the other people are.
Yeah.
And even to, know what to talk to them about. After we've heard the presentations, we know more about what the commissions are doing. And it might, make sense to have a half-hour cocktail hour again.
Right.
After the
Yeah, that's a
presentations.
really good idea.
Because
Yeah.
that way
It would have been,
we know with more about what they're doing.
Yeah,
You
that's a
think maybe
great
do
idea.
that first, whatever the second, like, do the dinner after, you think?
That's
Like
a
just flip
possibility.
it, kind of,
I actually did stay a little bit later after everybody left and I was there talking to certain people.
Cocktail hour is
Which
better.
worked. Yeah, what did I think that we should do? Another hour.
And I just want to thank Chair Clark for giving the presentation on the behalf of the commission. Everyone was very impressed at the kids table, aka where they put staff, and all of the work of the commission. So thanks, Chair Clark, for taking the lead with that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Thank you. And finally, the next item on the agenda is old business, and this one will be quite quick. It's the leaf blower ban. And we've been talking about that for the last couple of meetings, and Chairman Director McCloy has provided a lot of information about citations and the problem with enforcing the ban. But what I suggested at the end of that discussion is that perhaps we have an ad hoc subcommittee to look at messaging to landscapers, homeowners, and other businesses around the city to perhaps approach the problem from a different point of view. And so I volunteered to lead that subcommittee. I think we can kind of go slowly through the summer. And actually what I wanted to request is there are a couple of people that have been quite vocal about leaf blower ban and enforcing it. And that's Commissioner Frick and Commissioner Cohn. And I'd like to ask them if they would want to participate in a subcommittee, and then we perhaps if we can meet before the July meeting, then we can report back at the July commission meeting, about just basically where we're headed. Will that work? Are you willing? And you don't have to answer right now.
Well, I'm not going to be here after July 1.
Okay, I was thinking that, so that being the case, perhaps we can postpone this, it's not essential that we meet before the July meeting, but, I'd just like to get a commitment to participate in the.
I'll be back in mid-July.
In the mid-July, so.
Ad hoc subcommittees are also able to meet virtually, like on Zoom, if you choose, but you are also welcome to schedule it whenever you want, just. Giving that,
Not just
course,
that.
yeah. Yes,
Yes.
that's fair.
I think the first meeting would be pretty easy, basically going over the history of how the ordinance was developed. And then we have a lot of information recently about the enforcement or lack thereof. And then really to brainstorm about how we can approach people, and perhaps ways to fix the problems. If that's okay. If there's anybody else that would like to participate, but I was thinking these two have spoken up in our meetings in the past and good points of view. Thank you. Any other discussion on that?
Just wanted to report, we've been incrementally continuing to move forward, mostly in conversations with code enforcement. So, there have been a lot more, citations issued to homeowners, directly and property owners directly over the past 2 months. So we're gonna be looking at the results of that to see if it's changing our dynamics of our enforcement. We also, I know I mentioned in our last presentation, a desire to also figure out how we're highlighting success as much as we're pursuing failures to kind of maybe, increase visibility of all of the people who are complying with the ordinance. Code enforcement is on board with us, figuring out how best to do that. So I think that's something we'll look forward to some messaging ideas there, but we might start with like a little like smiley face magnet or something. But just to highlight, all of the people who are doing well, and who have adopted and are following the ordinance. So we want to do some of that as well.
What is the reason for the increase in citations? Did they?
I think they are just, because it's something that folks have been asking about a lot, they're working on being really aggressive on it. And the transition to citing the property owner has been kind of being implemented over the course of this year. So it was officially started as policy at the beginning, like toward the beginning of the year. And so I think when we do see the landscaper there and are able to cite the landscaper, that's who the citation is going to. But there are now more cases where there's, they're just saying like, well, get on here, give the citation, as opposed to saying, well, maybe I'll come back and see if I can get the landscaper, et cetera. So I think they're just kind of maybe shortening that circuit a little bit or shortening that loop a bit. It's my.
Yeah, because I was wondering why they would increase the citations. I had an experience on Friday where I did report with 2 photos. And before, when I reported the house, they would not do anything unless they showed up and saw the gas leak blower being used. But this time they actually contacted the owner and the property manager because it is a short-term rental.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was an improvement.
That's good.
That if you can just send a photo, then they will actually at least contact them. Before they would not even contact
Wow,
them.
okay.
So-
Well, yeah, that is how it's supposed to work. So I'm glad we're seeing that continue to, and reaching out to the property owner is definitely something that code's been working on over the course of this year.
Did you go underground or undercover?
Yeah, I was dressed like a little bush.
Like a
I was in the yard just waiting all afternoon and I saw him. I got the pictures.
And you didn't have a dog on a leash that's not right
Yeah.
down the street.
It's not a question, it's a helpful hint. There is a way for the ad hoc committee to actually look at the positives, and that would be to go to the local retailers, the reps. For the blowers and the different things that they've switched over to in the last few years, because they have the data. And they could actually break that data down in reference to Coachella Valley, Palm Desert, Palm Springs. They actually have that ability to go get that. And you could probably just go to the retailers and find out that retailer rep, and they can actually go in and get it. And I'll guarantee that they'd be more than happy to get it for you too, to show you, not just you, as also the general public, how that actually working.
So you're talking about
Electric.
the number of sales, so we
The number of
Increase
sales,
the
what
electric.
type of sales they are, the battery sales, the electric, who is actually buying electric, why they're buying it, where are they plugging it in? Difficult it is to plug in, to find, outlets, and also the education that they're doing.
Mhm.
There would actually be a positive to show,
Yeah, it's a
because
great
it's
idea.
there.
That's a big help, that would, yeah, to do that, so.
Don't come. I have the ability to call it.
You have connection to local retailers.
Is they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is the connection.
So is that a Brown Act violation? No.
So we'll try to get something done, possibly by July, or if not, by the meeting in September. But I think this is good information to know that there've been more citations and code enforcement is getting more aggressive, and I think we came to the point where new messaging really will be helpful, and that's probably a good starting point for how we're going to approach this. Thank you. And finally, the last item in the agenda is commissioner comments and June agenda items. So as we always do, we'll go around the table and ask everybody if there's any suggestions for items for discussion in our future meeting, the July meeting or after that. So we'll start with Commissioner Rocker.
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Green,
Can I go last?
Commissioner Rubin,
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Walker.
I have a couple of comments. I'm wondering if we can figure out, because we have so many puzzle pieces moving on and we need a lot of manpower for that. Basically, we need more people to do many things. So what other fellows can the city apply for and have multiple fellows that are already paid for under our wing so they can do this? Like if we want like 2 fellows to go out and scout every neighborhood for a whole month to see, hey, can you check whether that specific landscaping company has at least have a Palm Springs permit to operate? That became a major issue where in my neighborhood, I spoke to 3 people and they're like, no, we don't have any, we just come and do it. I'm like, go get it, because you are getting an incentive to change your leaf blower, and we don't know how many people are actually can operate. So maybe figuring out what other fellowships are available and how many can we apply and get them for a year term, so we can get a lot of things checked out will be helpful. And the second thing is like, when do you wanna have, when can we have meetings with some tribal committees or commissioners, appropriate people from the tribal tribal area? Because as a city, we are thinking about so many projects. As a sustainability commission, we are proposing so many. We wanna know, because majority of the land is under tribal ordinances. Like when Christian showed the map in the climate action subcommittee, it's like, oh, a lot of the land is under tribal area. And if they do something on the land, and if it's counterproductive, it's not good for the city as a whole. So maybe having the tribal communities come in and participate in this conversation will make it easier for us in the future. Thank you.
I think so, we'll put both of those on the list for future topics.
Thank you. Commissioner Alexander.
I don't have anything right now.
Nothing.
Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Frick.
Nothing.
Commissioner Green.
Yes, I am leaving. There is a main reason why I'm leaving that very few people know about. I had a discussion last night with you. I had a health scare a couple months ago, and it was right at the time that I was actually applying for a different position and doing something else, because about a year ago, when I originally applied for a commission position, it wasn't this one. And they asked me to be on this one, and I said, sure, but this is gonna be a lot of fun, and I'll learn a lot, and I did. And you guys are all awesome, and I much appreciate it. this health scare, goes back to, I had COVID 3 years ago, the worst one, ended up in the hospital. It was not good. And it kind of redid itself here about 2 months ago. And I ended up in the hospital again. Nobody knew that. Nobody, my husband. But it was kind of weird to have turn around and happen again. So what I've had to do is cut back. Literally, no more airport commissions, no more theater, no more sustainability. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna do work on my project management that I used to do years ago, and also, but I'm still committed to safe growth. That's the one thing that I'm gonna do. I've presented to one PS last week, very briefly and very quickly, because we got time was of essence last week, but I'm still committed to safe growth. Safe growth, you'll still hear from me in reference to that, how it's gonna happen, how I can get it implemented with the one PS, how we can work through that within the city, which means planning, sustainability. But I'm just gonna focus just on that and going back to school. Also, if you guys remember many months ago about the Palm Springs flag. The Palm Springs flag, and it was publicized, and everybody came into the store where I work and said, how come you guys don't carry the flag? You guys carry all the other flags. So I've been eagerly working on that and finally getting it. And we finally got a part of the flag this week, and that was the pins. I ordered the flags like those. They'll be coming in the next few months at the store. So I wanted to, gave some out last night to council and everybody, but you guys, I gave some to you guys also to have to take home. But officially, the flag will be actually coming back again after 40 years. We're gonna do a promotion for it in October, I do believe, with the family of the gentleman that produced the original Palm Springs flag back in 1984. So we're working on that. Like I said, I'm gonna miss you all, and I much appreciate all your hard work. It drives me nuts how many hours you guys work that I work and then you work, and I see you guys working, so I much appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll miss you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll miss you very much. Thank you very much for your service and your enthusiasm, your contributions, and thank you for sharing your personal concerns with us this evening as well. It means a lot. Thank you. Well, last but probably least, I have a comment or two. One of the things that came up a couple of years ago when we were dealing with challenges to boards and commissions was the size of commissions. And at that time, we had discussion within the Sustainability Commission, and we agreed to look at reducing the size of the commission from the 11, which is our roster, to 9 or 7. Nothing ever happened with that, but that was a recommendation that we discussed, and that we did put forward to the city council and the city manager at that time. The idea has come up again, and I thought it was something that we should discuss openly in the commission. And it's not a matter of kicking anybody off. It's something that would happen through attrition over the years as people's terms ended or other things happened. But also the model of the way we're doing things is different than, you can turn that on. The model of the way we're doing things is different than it was several years ago. In fact, the commission was originally had 7 members, and then it was increased to 11 a few years after it was formed. But now that we're really focusing more on major topics or initiatives like waste reduction and climate action, and we have subcommittees doing that work, it seems to work well, having the subcommittees do work and then bring the information back to the commission for discussion and perhaps voting on things. This is something that I really would like to just bring to the commission and talk about more. So if you agree, we'll put it on the agenda for the meeting in July, and we can see what people think about it. So do you agree? Should we put that on? Are there any comments, and should we put that on the agenda for July?
my only thought is to have it in September. I think in July, I know I may not be here, and some of the others of us may not be able to be here.
Well, we know that others will be gone in July, so perhaps it's something that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be July, I was just thinking of the next meeting, so. We could, if you agree, we'll put it on the agenda for September.
Yes.
So again, thank you to Eric and thank you all for the meeting tonight, and we came in at 1 hour and 35 minutes. That was probably the record. So,
Everyone.
is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second,
Yes, so there should be.
all in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.